All right, let's talk about something that's absolutely critical when you're running VMware Cloud Foundation. We're going to dive into how you take a storage design, a plan on paper, and actually transform it into a real living, breathing system that you can support. This is truly where the rubber meets the road.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll talk about making storage real. Then we'll get into deploying that foundation, turning on the key services, mastering those day-to-day operations, and of course, how to steer clear of some of the most common traps.
Okay, so first up, making it real. This is all about that huge leap, right? Going from a blueprint, a plan, to something that's actually a living, working system that's running workloads. And that brings us to the big question, the one every admin has to answer. How do you actually do it? How do you take that decision you made, hey, we're going to use vSAN, or we're sticking with our array, and turn it into a real, functioning workload domain? A place where you can actually put your VMs and trust that they're safe. Well, the best way to think about this is with a super practical 3-step mental model. First, you deploy. Just get the cluster stood up so it can hold VMs safely. Then you configure. This is where you light up all the advanced features and services. And last but definitely not least, you administer. You got to keep it healthy over time through all the changes and maintenance. That's the long game.
Okay, let's dive into that first phase, deploying your foundation. We're talking about choosing the right cluster for the job, because let me tell you, the choices you make right here at the very beginning, they're going to define everything that comes after.
See, it's not as simple as just saying, I'm deploying storage. Nope. You're actually picking a specific flavor of storage. Are you going with a standard vSAN cluster? A stretched one for site resiliency? Maybe a tiny 2-node setup for a remote office? Or are you using traditional storage? Each one is totally different with its own playbook. Now, this table is awesome because it really cuts to the chase. Just look at that biggest gotcha column. For a standard cluster, it's all about host count. For a stretched cluster, you're dealing with 2 sites and a witness, so latency and making sure that witness is healthy, absolutely critical. And those little 2-node clusters, man, their maintenance rules are super strict. It just hammers home that you have to match the right architecture to the job you're trying to do. Okay, so our foundation is down, it's solid. Now comes the fun part, activating all the cool storage services on top. But there's a catch. Every single time you go to flip a switch on a new feature, you absolutely have to ask yourself one very important question first. Let's take vSAN encryption as an example. It's a fantastic feature, right? It gives you data at rest protection, which is a must-have for security these days. You literally just check a box and bam, your data is encrypted on the disks. Sounds easy, right? But, and this is a big but, it's not free. And I'm not talking about money, I'm talking about operations. The second you enable that feature, you've just created a brand new external dependency. And guess who's responsible for it now? You are. And that new dependency, it's your key management server, the KMS. This is the whole system that dishes out the encryption keys. And here's the deal. If your vSAN cluster can't talk to that KMS for any reason, your encryption stops working. Decryption too. That connection, that trust, has to be rock solid 100% of the time. And this whole what am I now depending on mindset isn't just for encryption. It applies to everything. You want to turn on file services? Great. Present some iSCSI storage? Go for it. Set up data protection? Awesome. But each and every one of those adds something new to your checklist, new things you have to manage and keep an eye on. Nowhere is this more important than when you're sharing storage between clusters like with vSAN HCI Mesh. You have got to be crystal clear on the roles. Think of it like a landlord and a renter. The provider cluster is the landlord. It owns the physical storage. The consumer cluster is just the renter. It's using the space but doesn't own it. Getting those 2 roles mixed up in your head is one of the easiest ways to cause a huge mess. All right, let's shift gears to what I think is the most important part of this whole thing, day 2 operations. This is about keeping your storage healthy and resilient. This is the long game, the care and feeding of your system, where theory gets a big dose of reality. So yeah, day 2, your job is no longer about building, it's about maintaining. It's about dealing with all the real-world stuff, patches, upgrades, hardware failures, running out of space. Let's be honest, this is where 99% of problems are going to pop up. Okay, let me give you a classic problem. This one trips up admins constantly, in real life and on exams. Picture this, you've got a cluster, and suddenly you notice a data store isn't showing up on all the hosts. Only some of them can see it. What's your first move?
The rookie panics. The pro? The pro has a playbook. For non-vSAN storage,
This is your 3-step checklist right off the bat. Number 1, check access control. Is your zoning right? Are the NFS exports correct? Number 2, check for host consistency. Has one host drifted from the others? And number 3, check the pathing. Is the networking solid and consistent for every host? With vSAN, though, the traps are a little different. They're sneakier. It's less about a single setting and more about, well, awareness. It's so easy to forget how long a resync can take after you make a change, or to just ignore those little policy compliance warnings. Or my favorite, throwing a host into maintenance mode without really thinking through what that means for your data's protection level. These are the things that'll get you.
Okay, so this brings us to our final section, avoiding the common traps. We're going to pull all of this together into a mindset, a way of thinking that's going to help you stay out of trouble, whether you're in the command line or sitting for a certification. You know, when you look at all the most frequent mistakes people make, they all have one thing in common. Every single one. It's making assumptions, assuming all your hosts are configured the same, assuming you met all the prerequisites before you enabled a feature, assuming everyone understands who the provider and consumer are. It's assuming instead of verifying. And this right here, this is the difference between a good admin and a great one. The system pops up a warning. Hey, this VM isn't compliant with its storage policy. The amateur move, just weaken the policy so the alarm goes away. But the professional, the expert, they dig in and ask, why can't the system meet this policy? And then they fix the root cause. You don't lower the bar, you fix the system so it can clear it.
So I want to leave you with this final thought. This one question to keep in your back pocket. What's the difference between a cluster that's healthy and one that's just quiet? Because a quiet system, one with no alarms, isn't always a healthy one. The real health comes from being proactive, from constantly validating, and from taking those day 2 operations seriously. That, right there, is what makes all the difference.